Today I'm coming at you with a slightly different kind of video. My editor and salesperson came at me with the idea of why don't we just do a March 2025 shop update. So who knows, maybe this will become a monthly thing. It might be a good idea because I already sit down with my numbers on a month-by-month basis, and those are kind of the data points that I take as I'm going through my business. I don't look at things on a more granular level because it's harder to get patterns. Like for example, if I look at all of my data from 1 week, that's not really telling me anything. It could have rained Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I can't look at 1 week's worth of sales and say, oh, well, sales are low. It's like, it might have just been a cold week. It might have just been a rainy week. And that's very characteristic for March, specifically in the mid-Atlantic area. We're located in central Maryland. So March could be more winter, or it could be the beginning of spring, or more often a little bit of both. We've had some really cold weather days, and we've also had some days where it's been sunny and 80 degrees. I can tell you that overall, March is my first data point that I look at for the year. And looking at March of this year versus 2024 and our long-running averages, it is overall actually one of our slowest Marches on record. I don't say that in so much of a doom and gloom stance. It's mostly on the sales side rather than the service side. Our service numbers are only slightly below that of our average, whereas and I guess to throw you some numbers, we've done about 25 service orders this month in March, whereas typically we'll see somewhere around 40. And then on the sales side, we typically will start to pick up and sell about 20 or 25 bikes. However, so far in the month of March, we've sold 11. So we have noticed that due to or compared to our typical average, we are running a slow March. Again, I don't put too much stock into March on its own as a single data point, but it is interesting to see this type of stuff and think, okay, well, let's take a close eye at April, because if this continues into April, then it may play into some of our decision in terms of shop hours, how we would look at our price structures, whether or not we will decrease prices on our inventory, keep them the same. Typically, when you're in a hot market and you're selling above your average numbers, that's gonna be when it's time to start increasing prices, just in order to keep the number of bikes going in equal to the number of bikes going out. I think I mixed up my hand gesture there, but you know what I'm talking about. So by and large, March on the service side, a little bit slow, but not so far outside of our averages. And then on the sales side, definitely a dip. I want to talk a little bit more about the service side because as an overall trend across the entire previous year of 2024, I did notice, not just in my shop, but in other shops around the country, that service tends to be an increasing driver of revenue in shops. I suspect that the reasons behind this are just because, as a whole, year over year, there are more and more bicycles being sold in the United States, whereas we also are seeing bike shops closing their doors. When you have less shops to service more bikes that are in need of repair, you end up with a situation where a lot of your revenue dollars are slowly but surely moving from sales to service. I've noticed that in my own shop, and just looking at the singular data point of March 2025, I'm seeing that going ahead. I do suspect that in this coming year, it's going to be even more dramatic than 2024, insofar as I expect our service department to get extremely busy. And on the sales side, I expect things to be at average or maybe even a little bit below average.
You know, it's actually interesting because there's another data point that we were looking at where we're noticing a lot of people calling in, asking to trade in, or if we buy their bikes.
Oh, yes.
So we actually had to have a policy change.
Yes.
That you just instated.
Yeah, essentially what's been happening is while our sales have been a little bit slow, the number of sale and trade-in requests, as in people wanting to sell inventory to us, has been skyrocketing, honestly, through the roof. It may be the biggest spike in trade-in requests that we have seen since opening our doors. We have a lot of theories as to why that may be. Some of that can get into political things, which this is not a political channel. But it does seem that there are quite a few people out there right now that are looking to put an extra buck in their pocket. And we've actually become so overwhelmed with people trying to sell us bikes that we're in a position where we can no longer be purchasing them because we need some to go out the door in order for that balance to stay there. We have only a limited amount of space. And so I'm not going to say this is the first time that this has happened in shop history, but it is the first time in a while. We are at a point where we are taking bikes in strictly by trade-in or donation only. If a bike is coming into our inventory, it needs to be on a donation basis, or at the very least, it needs to be a trade-in on a sale so that we're not effectively taking up more of our valuable shop space. We're getting rid of a bike while we take in a bike, which is a more sustainable action than just piling them up in the back, not to mention having an outflow of dollars from us in order to pay for inventory that might be a little bit above and beyond what we need in the short term. I've talked about inventory turns in the past on this channel. Generally speaking, you want to be between about 3 and 4 inventory turns a year, or in other words, you want to hold on to 3 to 4 months worth of inventory at a time. It would not make sense for us to stockpile a war chest of bikes going out a year, because then we're just fronting a lot of cash flow into inventory that's going to sit for a while, not to mention inundating our own space to where it's a little bit less workable and we're tripping on bikes. So we're definitely at that point between a slower sales March and a lot of people looking to trade in. We are well stocked for the season. We're looking to have a closer to average April, May, June. Those are our bread and butter months that have yet to fail us. And of course, on the service side, we expect things to go crazy as per usual. But that's an update for March. That's kind of my first data point of the year. And again, I don't put too much heavy stock into March just because we are a little bit Wild West here in the Mid-Atlantic area with weather. We really didn't start seeing that warm weather until really the last week and a half or so. And if you were to look on a more granular level, we did have a very large pop in service orders just in this past week. So I do suspect as we get into April, May, and June, which are always beautiful weather months in the Mid-Atlantic area, we're going to see our usual turn and burn, going through inventory, going through service orders, and we'll see how it goes from there.
Yeah, and I wonder, because that's our experience, I wonder what other shops are kind of going through right now as far as sales,
Yes.
sales and service.
I would be interested for other shop owners to chime in just into the comments. How did March look for you? How did it compare to last year and to your averages? So those are the two comparisons that I like to do with all data points across my business. If I'm looking at a month, I compare it to the previous year, and then I compare it to my average, which for me, I've been in business 7 years, so I have enough data to have a reliable average. If you've been in business less than about 3 or so, then really all you've got is kind of comparing with that last season.
Has it been the case before that you have, I know this has been the slowest March on record, but has it been the case before that you have a slower March and then April just shoots up, and maybe you have a April that like even maybe outperforms a previous April? So is that kind of why it's so Wild West and unpredictable from that point?
It is, and I can tell you already, before even getting into April, that our spike in, if you actually look at the numbers, we did have our busiest January on record. So that'll tell you how looking at 1 month doesn't always give you the full scope, because if you look at March alone, you might think, oh, doom and gloom, but with as strong as our January was compared to our average, January actually has pulled the extra weight that made up for it. If you look at the 3 months, like the first 3 months of 2025, we actually are right on average. It's just that if you look at it more closely, it's that in January, we were above average. February, we were on average. and March were below. By the last day of May, every single year, when I look at all of my data from January 1st to May 31st, I've been able to predict what my income for that total year is going to be within 5%. Every single year for the past 4 or 5 years.
Not bad.
Because obviously those first few years, there wasn't enough data.
Right. I guess we'll just see what happens April 1st. Maybe everyone will decide to come in at once on that day.
Oh, I think April will be a busy month.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, so that kind of wraps this video. This was a very fly off the cuff. We just decided in a moment of creativity, I guess, to have this different kind of podcast style where my editor's actually standing behind the camera and we're having a bit of a conversation. But it might be interesting to do a monthly update or maybe even more podcast style videos in the future. Let me know in the comments what you think.